It was a warm summer evening, and I had just finished lighting the last candle on the table. The soft glow bounced off the walls of our tiny apartment, giving it an almost magical feel. Tonight was special, my wife Emily's birthday. We didn't have much, but I'd managed to scrape together enough for a nice dinner. I'd spent the last couple of hours cooking, trying to recreate her favorite dishes from that Italian place she loved, but that we could never afford. I glanced at the clock. Emily's shift at the diner would be over soon, and I couldn't wait to see her face when she walked in. I set the last plate on the table and took a step back, admiring my work. I may not be able to give her fancy gifts or lavish vacations, but I could still give her this, a night that was just about us. When the door finally creaked open, she walked in, exhausted from her double shift, but still looking as beautiful as the day we met. Her eyes widened when she saw the setup. "You did all this?" she asked, a soft smile forming on her lips as she shrugged off her coat. "Of course," I said, walking over to her. "Happy birthday, babe." Emily was my high school sweetheart. We'd been through everything together, first loves, prom, graduation, and then, of course, the baby. Our daughter wasn't planned, but we didn't think twice about getting married when we found out Emily was pregnant right after high school. I was convinced I was going to make it big with my band, that we'd be playing sold-out shows, and we wouldn't have to worry about bills or rent. But reality hit harder than I ever expected. The gigs dried up, the money didn't come, and before I knew it, I was painting houses during the day just to keep the lights on. Emily picked up 2 waitressing jobs, working her fingers to the bone while juggling motherhood. It wasn't the life we imagined, but through it all, we loved each other deeply, and even when things were tight, like really tight, we always managed to find joy in the little moments. But lately, something had changed. Emily had started wearing these fancy clothes, designer blouses, shiny jewelry. When I asked her about it, she'd laugh and wave it off. "Oh, they're fake, babe," she'd say, grinning. "Found them on sale at a thrift store." I wanted to believe her. I did. But every time I saw her in those clothes, it stung a little. It reminded me of how much I couldn't give her, of how far we were from the life I'd promised. We sat down at the table, and for a while, everything was perfect. We ate, laughed, talking about old memories from high school when life was simple. I poured us both a glass of cheap wine, and as the night went on, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we could be okay. But then, after I cleared the dishes and sat back down, she put her hand on mine. Her fingers were cold, trembling a little. "Hey," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I could tell by the way she was looking at me. Something was coming, something big. "Can I ask you for something?" "Of course," I replied, giving her my full attention. "Anything." She bit her lip, hesitating. "I've been thinking about something, and I don't know how to say it." "Just say it," I encouraged her. "It's me. Whatever it is, you can tell me." She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine, and then, just like that, she dropped the bomb. "I want a hall pass," she blurted out. For a moment, I just stared at her, my brain not processing the words. "A what?" "A hall pass," she repeated, her voice more steady this time. "Like a free pass. To be with someone else. Just once." I laughed nervously, trying to lighten the moment. "You mean like if you find some crush, I'm supposed to be okay with that? A one-time thing?" "Yeah," she said, her eyes serious. "Just once." I chuckled again, shaking my head. "Sure, babe, whatever you say. Find yourself a celebrity or something, and I'll be fine with it." But deep down, a chill ran through me. It was the way she wasn't laughing, the way her eyes didn't light up with that playful sparkle she usually had when we joked around. She was serious. A few weeks passed, and the conversation about the hall pass had faded into the background. One night, after band practice, I was packing up my gear when Dave, our drummer, came over to me. He had this weird look on his face. Dave and I had been friends for years, ever since we started jamming in my parents' garage, so I could tell when something was up. "Hey man," he said, hesitating for a second. "Can we talk?" I threw my guitar case over my shoulder and nodded. "Yeah, what's up?" He shifted on his feet, glancing around like he was trying to find the right words. "So, I saw Emily last night." I froze, feeling a tightness in my chest. "Okay," I said slowly. "Where?" "At that fancy place downtown. You know, the one with the valet and the chandeliers." What's it called? La Belle. Dave's voice was cautious, and he was staring at me like he was waiting for some kind of reaction. I frowned, confused. Emily had never mentioned going out, especially to a place like that. I couldn't even imagine her spending money on something so expensive. She didn't say anything to me about it. What was she doing there? Dave scratched the back of his neck, looking uncomfortable. She was with someone. A knot formed in my stomach. With who? One of her girlfriends? That's the thing, Dave said, his voice dropping a little. It wasn't a girlfriend. It was some older guy. I mean, at first I thought it was her dad or something because of the age difference. But dude. But what? They were kissing, like full on, at the table. I felt like I'd just been punched in the gut. No, that couldn't be right. There had to be some kind of mistake. You sure it was her? I asked, my voice shaky. Dave gave me a sympathetic look. I wish I was, man, but it was definitely her. I saw her clear as day. She was wearing that red dress. You know, the one she wore at your last gig. I knew the dress. I bought it for her a couple of months ago after saving up some extra cash from a big painting job. She looked beautiful in it that night, beaming with pride when she told me how much she loved it. I didn't want to believe Dave. I didn't want to believe any of it. But deep down, I knew something was off. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, in the way Emily had been acting lately. The fancy clothes, the long shifts that seemed to go later and later into the night. And now this. Look, man, I didn't want to tell you, Dave said, his voice low, like he was trying to soften the blow. But I thought you should know. You deserve to know. Thanks, I mumbled, though it felt like the words were sticking in my throat. And no matter how hard I tried to push it down, that sick feeling wouldn't go away. A few days later, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. She had her usual night shift at the diner, and I told her I was staying late at the studio. But instead, I drove to the diner and parked a few spots down, out of sight. I waited. The hours dragged on. I kept telling myself this was a mistake, that I'd see her get in her car and go straight home, and I'd feel like an idiot for doubting her. But then, just after midnight, I saw her come out. She wasn't alone. She stood by the curb, and moments later, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her. My stomach dropped as I saw the door swing open and an older man, probably in his late 50s, lean over to let her in. Emily didn't hesitate. She slid right into the passenger seat, and they drove off. When she got home later that night, I was waiting. The second I heard her key in the door, my heart started racing again. She walked in, looking tired but not surprised to see me still awake. "Hey," she said casually, dropping her purse on the table. "You're up late." I stood up from the couch, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me. "Where were you?" Emily didn't even flinch. She looked me in the eye, completely calm, like she'd been expecting this. "I was at work. You know that." "No, I mean after," I snapped, my voice rising. "I saw you, Emily. I saw you get into his car." "Who is he?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, instead of panic or guilt, I saw something else in her eyes, exhaustion, like she was tired of pretending. "You promised," she said softly. I blinked, taken aback. "What are you talking about?" "You promised me a hall pass," she said, her voice steady. "Remember? On my birthday?" I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "That was a joke, Emily. I didn't mean it." "Well, I took you seriously." Her tone was so matter-of-fact, like she was discussing a grocery list. "I've been tired, okay? Tired of this life. Tired of being poor, of struggling every day just to get by. I didn't want to do this, but when he came along, it was easy. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut." "Easy? You call this easy? You're cheating on me? Emily, you're sleeping with some old guy for money." She sighed, rubbing her temples like she had a headache. "He's not just some old guy. He's been good to me. He's given me things you couldn't." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind was spinning. "Do you love him? Is that what this is? You'd leave me for him?" She shook her head, and for a moment, I saw something like sadness in her eyes. "No, I don't love him, but I don't love this life either. I loved you when we were in high school, when you were the guy who played guitar and had big dreams. But that was 4 years ago, and now we're just stuck. I had to give up everything for this. For us. For the baby." I dropped out of college, remember? Emily, we made those choices together, I said, my voice trembling. I didn't force you to do anything. She looked away, her jaw clenched. One night, he left me a huge tip, and then he kept coming back, leaving more. It was more than I could make in a week. I couldn't say no. And then one night, he asked me out for drinks. I went. I let him take me to that fancy bar. And after that one night, he gave me more money than I'd ever seen. And you just kept going back? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't want to tell you, she said quietly, her eyes finally meeting mine. That's why I asked for the hall pass. I thought if you found out, at least it wouldn't hurt so much. My heart shattered. All the trust, all the love we'd built over the years, it was gone in an instant. I felt a rage boiling up inside me, and before I could stop myself, I snapped. Are you serious right now? I shouted. You sold yourself for a few extra bucks because you're tired of being poor? You could have talked to me. Emily, you didn't have to do this. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I couldn't talk to you. You've been so focused on your music, on trying to make it work. I didn't want to hold you back, but I couldn't keep living like this either. I turned away, my hands shaking with anger and hurt. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. This wasn't the girl I fell in love with. The room, our small, cluttered living room, felt unbearably silent. No. The word came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't care. I can't forgive you, Emily. Not for this. She flinched but stood her ground, still clutching her purse, her fingers digging into the leather. You don't mean that, she stammered, her voice shaking now, the calm facade cracking. I was trying to help us. You call this helping? I cut her off, my voice rising. Sleeping with some old guy? For money? How is that supposed to help us, Emily? How? Tears welled up in her eyes, but they only made me angrier. She had no right to cry, not after everything she'd done. She held out her hand, shaking, like she was offering me something invisible. We can use the money, she said, her voice trembling. I've saved up. I'll give it all to you, to us. We can start over. I felt a bitter laugh bubble up from my chest, but it died before it reached my lips. Keep your damn money, Emily. I don't want it. I don't care how much it is, it's dirty. Just like everything between us now. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I saw the girl I used to love, the girl who'd sneak out of her parents' house just to meet me by the lake. But that girl was long gone. In her place stood someone I didn't recognize, someone who'd traded our life, our love, for a stack of dirty cash. I never wanted this, she whispered, her voice barely audible now. I didn't know what else to do. I turned away from her, my chest heaving, trying to calm the storm inside me. I want a divorce. She left that night. She didn't try to argue. I heard the door click shut behind her, and with it, the end of everything I thought I knew about my life. A few months passed. I didn't hear from her. Didn't want to. I buried myself in my music, painted houses when I could just to keep the bills paid, just to keep my mind from spiraling. But then one day, out of the blue, I got a call from Lisa, a mutual friend. She sounded worried, hesitant to tell me the news. Did you hear about Emily? She asked, her voice tight with concern. My heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself to stay calm. No. What about her? Lisa sighed. She's in trouble, Matt. Big trouble. It felt like the ground shifted beneath me, but I kept listening. That old guy? The one she was with? Turns out he wasn't some rich businessman like she thought. He was just a party planner for some wealthy people. But he'd been stealing from them jewelry, art, all kinds of expensive stuff, and selling it on the black market. I sat down, my head spinning. And Emily? She got caught up in it, Lisa said softly. Apparently, she was helping him sell the stolen goods. She didn't know at first, but when she found out, well, she kept doing it. She's been sentenced to community service, but it could have been worse. A lot worse. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The image of Emily, my Emily, being dragged into something so sordid, something so dark, was too much to process. Matt, I'm sorry, Lisa added. I thought you should know. Thanks, I muttered, ending the call. I sat there, in the quiet of my apartment, letting the weight of it all sink in. The old man wasn't rich. He was a thief. And Emily, she'd fallen for his lies, for the false promise of a better life, just like she'd given up on me, on us. She traded her integrity for the illusion of wealth, and now she was paying the price. I stood up, walked over to the window, and stared out at the street below. It was raining, soft droplets tapping against the glass, and I watched as a couple hurried by, huddled under an umbrella, laughing. Once upon a time, that had been us. But that was the thing, wasn't it? Money, status, material things, they could never fill the void inside. When your heart is corrupted, no matter how rich you are, it will never be enough. Emily had learned that the hard way. And while it hurt to think about her, to think about what she'd become, I knew that I had to let it go.